I told you I was on your side. I told you I would never hide. So you can put your hand in mine, 'cause I'll be keeping by your side. I'll love you till the stars turn cold, and I'll love you like this ring I hold. Yes, around it goes, a circle never knows the end of the line. So you will find with our love, 'cause this love is a band of gold. When the fire's burning and when the embers feel cold. So when I hold you in my arms, I hope you know that this love is a band of gold.
Hello and welcome to the Goldberry Artisans Podcast. My name is Emily. I'm coming to you from my backyard here in Maine. And this is a podcast all about knitting. Every once in a while another craft will sneak in there, usually still fiber related. And about being okay with making mistakes and all the things that we learn throughout our crafting journeys. So thank you to anyone who is new to my channel for checking out this video, and thank you to returning viewers. Welcome back. I hope that you, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, that you will enjoy what I'm talking about today. It's been a little while since I last recorded, so I might be a little rusty and forget things that I normally would do, but we'll just go with it. So today I have a couple of finished objects. I'm going to talk about some works in progress, a couple new skeins of yarn, and some embroidery. And then I'll probably, I guess, can give a little bit of a life update at the end for those of you who are interested. Before we dive into the finished objects, I want to kind of go back to my little welcome to anyone sort of spiel that I just finished. I just want to say that absolutely anyone and everyone are welcome here, wherever you come from, whatever you enjoy, that you are welcome here, as long as you are kind. That's my goal. We need to be kind to ourselves and to each other. Okay, so I told you I'm a little bit rusty. It's been a while. It's been a minute. So we'll jump right in with some finished objects. And where'd my phone go? I will be referring to my Ravelry project pages for the information on some of these things. I don't normally write down show notes about details for yarns and everything because I try to keep my Ravelry project pages updated. So if you see me looking down, like right now, I'm looking down at my phone because that's where all my information is. Also, I'm just realizing that I forgot one of my finished objects, so I'll probably pop out and grab that and come back in a little bit. But we'll jump right in with what I have. So my first, it's finished, ends woven in. Yes, ends are woven in, not yet blocked. But this is the Sipala sweater by Caitlin Hunter of Boyland Knitworks. And if you're new around here, I typically like to give some of my projects different names. Sometimes it comes early on, sometimes it'll come later, it'll remind me of something. And I have been re-listening to the Lord of the Rings trilogy over the past several months. And the gorgeous green yarn in this reminded me of Lord of the Rings. So I have called this sweater my In Every Wood in Every Spring sweater, based on a quote from the Fellowship of the Ring, which says, "For still there are so many things that I have never seen, In every wood, in every spring, there is a different green. So the yarn for this sweater is lichen and lace in the matte sock base. I forget the woman's name who dyes the yarn for lichen and lace, but she's based out of New Brunswick in Canada, which is where my family, my dad's side of the family is from, and many of them still live there in New Brunswick. So the yarn, so that's where the yarn is, that's the dyer for this yarn. The green yarn is her baby leaves color, and this kind of white yarn is her linen color. You may remember if you watched my previous episode, although it's been a while, so you probably forgot. I started this sweater. It's a top-down sweater, so I started this, and I got maybe like here, and I was like, oh no, I'm not gonna have enough of this yarn, of the white yarn, which is crazy because the pattern says it only takes like 200 and something yards, and this skein has 400, but maybe my gauge is way off. Oh no, I'm gonna end up with like a crop top, like super cropped sweater. So I called the Mother of Pearl yarn shop in Freeport. I'd been there a couple of times, and I knew that they carried lichen and lace yarn. So, because I had looked on her website for the yarn, but shipping from Canada to the US is expensive. So I looked on her list of stockists to see if there's anybody in case Mother of Pearl didn't have it. But I called Mother of Pearl, and they just so happened to have one skein of the linen color in the matte sock base. I was all excited. I went up there one day after work, because it's the shop itself. It's in Freeport, Maine, and from my house, it's probably about 45 minutes away, but it's only about 20 minutes away from where I work. So I slid over there after work, grabbed the yarn, I was all excited I was going to have enough. I get home, keep working on the sweater, then I realized that I had bought this yarn from somebody who's de-stashing, and from Sarah, who used to do the Dabbling Shepherdess podcast. She was getting rid of it, and she had started a project with it and had frogged the project. And so the one skein of the linen yarn was caked into two separate balls, and I forgot. I had one cake of the yarn in my project bag, and the other cake was in one of the bins on my shelf where I keep my yarn. So I discovered this after I'd already bought a new skein of the linen yarn. But as you will see, I have already started using the extra skein that I bought in a later project that I'll talk about. So yep, this is all done. I just need to block it, but I kept thinking, okay, maybe today I'll have time to record a podcast, and I didn't want this to be on the blocking mats if it was on a day when I could record, so I kind of wanted to wait to record to block this. And it's the same with the next finished object that I have. So that is my Cipolla sweater. I have tried it on. I like how it fits. I'm not going to try it on today because, yes, this is Maine, but it still gets hot. Not really wool weather. But I'm excited to have this. I now work in an office, and I can wear hand knits because I used to work at a daycare. Did not wear hand knits to daycare except for socks. So I will be able to wear this, but even in the winter, but I like that it's short sleeved so that I don't get too hot. Because what I discovered this past winter was that I could wear like fingering weight wool sweaters as long as I didn't have like a t-shirt underneath. If I just had a tank top underneath, and then I was a nice comfortable temperature inside the office. So I'm excited that I will be able to wear this particular sweater to work even during the winter, even though it is short sleeved. Oh, I did want to mention, made a mistake on this sweater. Oh, and a modification. It's been a while since I finished it, so I kind of forgot. So if you'll notice, on the neckline, it has a stockinette stitch rolled neckline. And on the hem, it has some ribbing, and then also the rolled edging. What I do sometimes with sweaters, if I think that I might have just enough yarn, I'll get to a certain, I'll get, I did the yoke, get a little bit of the way into the body, and then I went and did the sleeves, and then returned to the body. That way, I I can kind of alter the length of the body. That's easier to do than to, like, that way I know that the sleeves are done. I don't need to worry about how much yarn the sleeves will take because they're already done. Okay, so I went back into the sleeves, and so they're pretty short, and then there's a small amount of the color work, and then you do ribbing. What you're supposed to do is do the ribbing, do a rolled edge, then bind off. What I did was do the ribbing and I was like, oh, it's a nice small circumference to do a tubular bind off, because I like to do tubular bind offs because they just look nice and even. So I don't have the stockinette rolled edge on my sleeves, but that's okay. The other purposeful modification that I made was on the hem. In the pattern, I think the pattern all the way down, you just do the body color all the way down. Let me check. Yes. So according to the pattern, I should have done the green all the way down and done the ribbing and the rolled edge in the green. But I got to like about here, I think, and I was realizing that I probably would not have enough of the green to do that. So I thought, okay, well, it's a color work sweater, so it should be easy enough to do some color work on the bottom. My first thought was to do something similar to the sleeves on the bottom. So that was one option, or I could do some sort of modification of the yoke color work. So I went through on Ravelry, tons of people have made this sweater. So I went through and looked at what some other people had done, and I really liked one particular project. I will link it in my show notes, both down below. Yes, show notes can be found in the description box here on YouTube and on goldberryartisans.com. So anyway, I'll link that one. But what this one particular knitter had done was take the yoke color work and reverse it. So instead of starting with this section and go like with here going into the ribbing, it goes like from the bottom up. So that's what I ended up doing, because the yoke obviously involves increases, so there are increases built into the color work chart here. But then once you get to a certain point, there's no more increases. So that made it a lot easier to adapt that to the hem. And then once it got to the point where the increases were starting, I kind of measured out how long that would be based on the yoke. And so that's how I decided when I would start the color work for the hem. And then once it got to the point where there were increases in the chart, I just stopped. And then I did the ribbing and the edge in the linen yarn, which was good because I definitely would not have had enough of the green yarn to do the body color all the way down. But I really like how it ties the whole sweater together. And so I like it because with the neckline in the contrasting color, I like that the bottom is also in the contrasting color as well as the edges of the sleeves. Okay, I think that's it on this particular sweater. My next finished object was a test knit, and I was a bad test knitter. It took me a while to finish this, and so I didn't really talk about it even on Instagram right after it was released, and then it kind of was summertime here, so, but now we'll talk about it. This is the Peaceful Shawl by Obects of the Little Home Designs. I've done a couple of test knits for her, and I love all of her patterns. This is a variation on her Restful Shawl, which I test knit this winter. The Restful Shawl, I'll insert a picture here so you can see it, is a fingering weight triangle shawl with stockinette stitch, bobbles, and like a garter rigged with some eyelets in it. So then Bex had some DK weight yarn, and she just wanted to see what it would look like in a DK weight. So she started it, realized that because it was a heavier weight yarn, it was going to be a little bit of it was going to turn out differently. So she added some garter stitch short rows to the edges of the shawl and added some tassels. I have not yet put on the tassels. I wanted to block this first. But I will make some tassels and put them on here. So, as with the rest of the shawl, I completely fell in love with this shawl and the pattern. It's such a soothing project because it's a simple shape, like triangle shawl is a simple shape. But I know that for me, I can sometimes get bored if I'm knitting and it's the same thing over and over and over again. But I like that this, you go from the stockinette to the garter eyelets, stockinette, bobbles, and you do that a couple of times. Bobbles do take forever to knit, but they look so cool. So the yarn that I used for this, oh, I forgot to mention, this one also has a Lord of the Rings inspired name. I'm telling you, I just love it. So this is my Cheerful Hobbit shawl. It's from a quote in the Two Towers that says, "Being a cheerful hobbit, he had not needed hope, as long as despair could be postponed." It's talking about Samwise Gamgee, who I love. And I just love that quote. Just, you know, I just love that he had not needed hope as long as despair could be postponed. Just really. So, anyway, the yarn was yarn that was given to me. I don't have a lot of DK weight yarn. I'd say like 90% of my stash is fingering weight with a couple random skeins of some DK worsted and bulky thrown in there. But I had recently been gifted some absolutely gorgeous yarn, and in it was 2 skeins of this gray yarn that and then 1 skein of this cream yarn. Now, the label on the gray yarn was Barrett Wool Co., and it was a DK weight base. I could not find information on a DK weight base for Barrett Wool Co. anywhere. My guess is that it must have come from a kit at some point that they put together, and it's not something they regularly stock. On their website and on Ravelry, all I could find were fingering weight and worsted weight bases. Maybe some bulky weight? I don't remember. So apparently, it's not a thing, but I had some. So I knew that I would not have enough with the 2 skeins that I had. I wouldn't have enough for the entire shawl. But I figured I would have enough for most of the shawl, and that I could do the border in a different color. And so I knit the shawl, and then I got to the garter stitch border. And at first I was like, oh, it still looks like I have quite a bit of the gray yarn left. I'll just use this. I got halfway through the first garter stitch wedge, because basically you get to this point and you work, oops, you can't see. So you work the garter wedge on one side and then the other side using short rows. So I got about halfway through the first garter wedge and realized I wasn't even going to have enough yarn for one of the garter wedges with the gray. So I ripped it out, and I debated about what color yarn to use for the edge, whether I wanted to go with a lighter color with this cream, or I also had some darker gray that I could have used here. But I ended up choosing the cream, obviously. So, and this is why it took me so long. I was definitely playing some yarn chicken. So I completed the first garter wedge, started the second, realized I was not going to have enough yarn. So I frogged the whole thing, not the whole shawl, no, just the garter wedges. And now I want to eat like some potato wedges. Man, I keep saying that. Anyway, so I ripped it back, and then I re-knit the garter short row sections, but I did more stitches in between the short rows than was called for in the pattern, because I'm a bad test knitter. So I don't remember how many stitches it called for in between, but I think I added 2. So I don't remember exactly what it was, but for example, if it said to knit 4 before a wrap and turn, or before the German short row, I did 6. And so I had just barely enough yarn to do both sides. So now my tassel problem is that I can't decide if I want the tassels to be in the cream yarn or in the gray yarn. I have not decided yet. I may make one of each and see how I like them. But I cannot wait till it cools down again to wear this because it's just like such a big, cozy, smushy shawl, and I love it so much. And the garter stitch short rows really help it to come around and drape really nicely when you wear it, and just help give it some more body without necessarily just having a bunch of more increases to make the triangle, the basic triangle shape, bigger. So yeah, basically, I love this pattern. And the yarn it's beautiful yarn. I definitely want to find some more Barrett Wool Co. and use it again. I do love the yarn. Just apparently, I won't find it in a DK weight base because that supposedly, apparently, does not exist. My next finished object has actually been washed and blocked, and all the ends are woven in. It's a miracle. This was also a test knit. This is the Acacia sweater by Zelly Knits, and I used Quince & Company Finch in their Delft colorway for this sweater. Sorry. I will insert some pictures that I took after I finished this test knit. I love this sweater. It is my first time knitting a cropped sweater. When I saw the testing call on Instagram, when Lizelle posted it, I knew that I had to make it either as a test knitter or knitting it once the pattern was released, because I had been wanting to try knitting a cropped sweater, and it is knitted sideways, which I thought was really cool, and I've never knit anything like knit a sweater that way before. So it was a cool challenge, like a different construction, and it would give me a chance to see what a cropped sweater would be like and how it would fit me. I hadn't been totally sure about cropped sweaters because I'm not that tall, so I don't really wear a lot of like high-waisted skirts or pants or anything, because most of the time it makes me look even shorter. Like, I'm 5'4", so I'm kind of like a little bit below average, but also just because of my body shape, it kind of will often seem to like remove any definition, like, oh look, this is where my waist is. Which you'd think theoretically high-waisted would be like, oh look, there's my natural waist. Doesn't always look great. Don't always like how I look when I try that. So, but I've been loving seeing the cropped sweaters that people posted on Instagram and the new patterns that are coming out, and seeing people of all different shapes and sizes showing off their beautiful cropped sweaters. So I decided I wanted to give it a try. So this sweater, you knit the first sleeve, set it aside, then you knit the second sleeve, and then you begin to knit the body. And so you go back and forth. So like, this is the beginning of the row, you go across this way, and then around the back. And you do that until you get to the neck, and then you knit the front and back separately until they reach the measurements, and then you graft on the second sleeve. And I decided to use Quince & Company Finch for this sweater because since it was a cropped sweater and it had a different construction, I wanted to use a yarn that I knew would be nice and sturdy. It was going to hold its shape over a long period of time. It wasn't something that was going to relax so much that it no longer fit. Or no longer hit me. Because it's a crop sweater, I wanted to hit at exactly a certain point, and so I wanted to have a yarn that I knew would be nice and elastic. So I knit size 2, and there are, Lizelle also included some modifications to make this the kind of sweater that anybody can make, no matter what their body shape is. So the two modifications included an option to make it longer, because normally if you're knitting, like for this sweater, if I want to make it like a standard sweater, if I want to make it longer, I just can knit more. So it's a lot easier to make that modification. But for this, you can't do that. So she includes a modification to make it longer, which some of the testers did, and also included directions to increase the bust while keeping the waist the same. Again, if I was knitting this and needed more area in the bust, I could just include some standard increases, or increases, decreases, whatever direction you're going, to help increase for the bust and then decrease again for the waist. But again, because of the unique construction, that wasn't possible. So she added a modification to that you could use to increase the bust size. So I did not end up doing any of the modifications for this. But something that I do also really love about this sweater is the size range, and the fact that the sizes are just numbered, like size 1, size 2, size 3, instead of like, oh, small, medium, large. Just knit, so it's a lot easier. You just focus on, okay, this is my gauge, this is my bust size, therefore I'm going to knit size 3 or whatever. So the size, and every size is kind of like a range. So it goes, the size number 1 is a 28 to 34 inch bust, which is 71 to 86 centimeters. I'm not doing that in my head. Lizelle includes that in the pattern page. And it goes all the way up. The largest size is a 60 to 62 inch bust, or a 152 to 158 centimeter bust. So it's a really nice size range, and with those modifications, it's definitely the kind of sweater that anybody could make. And if you don't want a crop sweater, you can just add the modification to make it longer, and still have a beautiful sweater. So this is technically the front, and this is technically the back. The main difference is this stitch pattern that runs down the middle of the back, but I can easily wear this either direction because the neckline is the same on both sides. Everything's the same. Since I didn't do any of the modifications for the bust size, the front and back are the same, so I can easily wear it frontwards or backwards. So in the pictures, I'm wearing this over a blue maxi dress that has, that comes in like at my natural waist. And I was getting dressed for church the other day, and I put on a skirt, like one of the few skirts that I will wear with a shirt tucked in, because like for that one skirt, it looks good. And I put it on, I was wearing a black shirt with it, and then it was too hot to wear this sweater, but I tried this sweater on, and it matches perfectly. So I'm really excited to explore some more styling options for this once the weather cools down. I think there may have been some testers who used a plant-based fiber to test this. I think, don't remember exactly. But Lizelle is from South Africa. That's where she lives. So a lot of her patterns, I think some of her other patterns, are tank tops, and they are knit with plant-based fibers. So if you want to make this into a nice summery sweater, that is possible. So yeah, I love this sweater. Lizelle is a wonderful human being, and it was a joy to do a test knit for her. So that is all I have for finished objects. 30 minutes later. So let me jump into my works in progress. The first one that I will talk about is part of a mystery knit-along run by Alicia Plummer, who lives in Maine, which is fabulous. So if you are part of that and you don't want to see this, don't look, but I'm on clue 3, and clue 4 was released a few days ago, like almost a week ago. So I'm behind. So this is the Spoondrift Shawl Mystery Knit-Along. Alicia hosts a mystery shawl knit-along every summer. This is the first summer that I have joined in. So there's like a little bit of it's not really a story. It's kind of a description of something at the ocean with every clue that kind of gives meaning to the different stitch patterns. So the reason that I'm behind is just because this particular stitch pattern requires a lot more concentration, so I have to do it. I can't do it while I'm reading or just pick it up and do like a row and put it back down. It just takes a little bit more thought. But I love how it looks. It actually reminds me more of a crochet stitch than a knit stitch, but I love how it looks. So the yarn that I'm using for this is yarn from the Angora Mousse. It is her smooth sock base in her Peter's Coat colorway. I don't have any of the tags with me. I will insert the pictures I took because Kayla at the Angora Mousse is like a magical human being with magical watercolor powers, and she hand paints all of her yarn labels, and she also, I think she sells prints of her watercolors. Yes, anyway, her work is beautiful. So this is naturally dyed with indigo, which I'd never knit with indigo yarn that was this light before, but it definitely, like, I can tell it's indigo. It still gets all over my fingers when I work on it, but I'm absolutely loving this yarn. If I was a really good knitter, I would be alternating skeins, but I don't want to do that on a shawl. I don't want that like edge of like little loose things running up one side of it, so I'm not doing that. I did alternate skeins on my Cipolla sweater, and I'm alternating skeins the next project I'm going to talk about, but not this one. Because normally with hand-dyed yarns, you want to alternate because no matter how amazing a dyer is, there's always going to be variations, like slight variations in the yarns. But I'm just not. But I do like that this shawl does call for 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn, I think. So that makes it a more feasible project to just kind of jump in on. So yeah, I'm just having a lot of fun working on this. Just this particular section is taking me a little bit longer. But hopefully I'll have a chance to catch up on that today and tomorrow, and catch up to the next clue. The next project I'm working on, I don't remember if I talked about this last time or not, but I'm working on the Maritimo, I don't really know how to say it, sweater by Caitlin Hunter. And I am using 6 and 7 fiber. I forget which base this is. Again, I don't have the tags with me. I think it's her base that is Corriedale wool and nylon, I think. I know it's not her merino base. So yeah, so this is her puffed sleeves colorway, and this is the Matthew and Marilla colorway, both from her Anne of Green Gables collection, which I adore. I adore Anne and her collection of Anne-inspired yarns. So yeah, so I totally, apparently this is a theme with me, I made a mistake in the hem of the sweater. So the pattern calls for like a garter, like a garter ridge right here, like just a knit row and a purl row, because you're working the round, to make a garter stitch ridge before you start the lace pattern. Did I do that? No, I did not. I just knit 2 rows and then started. But it'll be fine. I'm not enough of a perfectionist. I noticed it and I was like, it's not really worth going back to fix. Not like a problem that's going to make it not fit, so I'm ignoring it. And obviously this lace section will, once it's blocked, you'll be able to see the lace better. So yeah, right now it's just kind of going around and around. This is the kind of project that if I just have a couple of minutes, or if I need to read, like do some reading for my summer classes for school, I'll just pick this up because it's really easy to work on right now. And I am alternating skeins in this sweater. However, I'm doing it differently than I have done before. So in the Cipolla sweater, I alternated skeins at first I started doing every 2 rounds I'd switch, then I started doing every other to kind of even out the little seam that appears when you drop the yarn and pick up the new one. And I was halfway through this sweater when I was watching an episode of the Legacy Fiber Arts. Legacy Fiber Arts is their yarn. I think Legacy Knits is the podcast. So, I believe it was Chelsea was talking about using the helical knitting method to alternate skeins in her Maritimo sweater, and how that avoids that line that will appear when you alternate skeins. So they included a link to the video that Chelsea had used, which was a video by Grace of Babel's Traveling Yarns. So I've been doing the helical method for this, which I'm not going to try to explain it here. I'll link to the video so that you can watch it. But yeah, it basically just means that the place where you swap skeins is different every round, and so you don't end up with that line of where you switch. So I'm really enjoying this, and I like knowing that I won't have that sort of seam in it. I assume it will block out. I honestly, any other time that I've knit a sweater with hand-dyed yarns, I'm trying to think, I may have only knit one sweater with hand-dyed yarns, and that was the Alyeska sweater by Caitlin Hunter. And I didn't need to alternate skeins because I was only ever using, it was like one color here and another color here and a third color here, so it was different colors, so I didn't have to worry about alternating skeins. And if I'm using a commercially produced yarn or like the Quince & Company yarn, I don't alternate. So I really am glad to have discovered the helical method to alternate skeins for this, so that way I don't end up with that seam. It just makes me feel better, and it's fun. So I think I'm getting close to a point where I split for the sleeves. I might still have a couple inches left to go. I'll need to measure it and find out. So that's my current sweater project. Again, a short sleeve sweater. I'm kind of trying to figure out what knits will work well in an office setting, like what will look more dressed up, I guess, but that I won't get too hot. So, working on that one. My final work in progress is I'm also using 6 and 7 fiber Anne of Green Gables yarn. This is the Seaworthy Wrap by Erin of Remade by Hand. I have followed Erin on Instagram for a long time. I love her patterns. I just had never gotten around to making any of them. But I had purchased the Anne of Green Gables mini skein collection from 6 and 7 fiber a while ago, but I'd been saving it for a special project. I didn't want to put it in my scrappy blanket right away, which is also because the mini skeins are 20 grams, which is way more than I need for one square of a blanket, and I wanted to have a project where they could kind of all be together and I could see them when I wore them instead of just being in my blanket. So they sat on my shelf for a long time, and then Erin released the Seaworthy Wrap, and I thought, that's it. That looks like the kind of sweater. I looked at the yardage and saw that I would probably have enough yardage to knit this using the Anne of Green Gables mini skeins and the extra skein of lichen and lace yarn in the linen colorway that I had purchased. So once I'd realized my mistake that I didn't actually need that yarn for the sweater, I immediately thought of pairing it with the Anne of Green Gables mini skeins so that I could make something a little bit bigger. And something that I love about Erin's patterns is that if you sign up for her, I forget what she calls it, but basically you enter your email address and then she sends you the password, and you can log in, and any of her patterns. Like, all of her patterns have extra information there. Everything you need to knit the pattern is in, like, to knit the project is in the pattern that you purchase on Ravelry. But you can sign up for free, and she includes extra resources and tips and helps for her patterns. So for this pattern, that meant that there was a worksheet that showed all of the sections. So all of these, she calls them the arrows, and then this mesh section. It shows that for all of these, how much yarn in grams that you need for all of them, because then the mesh sections get smaller, and then the arrows, I'm at the point now where it's getting smaller and the arrows are going to be smaller. So they all take a little bit of a different amount of yarn. So what I could do was look at my mini skeins and figure out what order I wanted them in, and I realized that I was probably going to need to mix in some other leftover yarns. So like this yarn is a different yarn, it's unknown, I don't know where it came from. And then these two are Legacy Fiber Arts mini skeins that were left over from a mini set that I had purchased from them. Sorry, the lighting is getting a little funky. The sun is moving. Hopefully it's okay. Anyway, so I was able to go on and figure out the yardage that I needed so I could knit this. And I'm pretty sure that's the kind of thing that Erin includes in all of her other wrap patterns, which makes them wonderful for using up leftovers and scraps, or if you have, I know that when I knit socks, I often end up with 20 to 30 grams left over, so it's really, which is, again, too many to make a square in a blanket. Like, I can still add to my Cozy Memories blanket, but it's enough that I feel like I can still make something bigger. So that's a really nice resource to have, because then I can figure out like how much yarn I'll need and how many of those leftover skeins I would need to knit one of her wraps. So I arranged the colors. I went from like the brighter, like kind of more vivid, darker colors on one end, and then moved into the lighter colors. Now I have used all the colors plus 3 extra, and I still have 2 more arrow sections to do at the end, so I haven't totally decided what colors I'm going to do at the end yet. I may go back, I would have enough. I may use this green and blue that I used at the beginning, and I may use that again at the end. We will see. What I love about this is that it's big enough. I could just wear it wrapped around like this, but it's small enough that if I want to style it more like a scarf, that I can do that as well. I have not really made many scarves, partly because I like really long scarves, and I like wider scarves, which means that they take longer to knit. And like I said, sometimes I get bored with knitting. If I'm doing the same stitch pattern back and forth, like a 2 or 4 row repeat pattern for like 6 feet, that's just no. It would sit in my basket for years and never get done. But that's something that I love about this wrap and Erin's other patterns, is that a lot of them can be worn like a scarf, but they have a stitch pattern that changes, or there's different colors to keep it more interesting. So I will definitely be making more of her patterns. And actually, this mini skein set was how I picked the colors that I wanted for the sweater I just talked about. I looked at the minis. I was trying to decide what 2 colors I wanted to pair for my Maritimo, and I picked them based on the mini skeins that I had. Oh, one other change I forgot to mention that I'm making to my Maritimo sweater is the pattern actually calls for 3 colors. You have your main body, and then you have 2 contrasting colors, but one of the contrasting colors is literally just used for 2 rows on either side of the lace sections. I was not about to buy a 3rd skein of yarn for like 8 rows. So I'm just knitting those rows in my contrast color. So, yep, why not? Alright, I'm going to move back a little bit because the sun is all funky. Okay, slightly different angle, a little bit more in the shade. I do have, so that's all I have for works in progress. And there are other things that I've worked on in the past, 3 months since I last uploaded a podcast, but I do not have time to go into all of them, and I don't even remember some of them. So, moving on, I have a couple of skeins of yarn that I purchased that I'd like to talk about. Most of the time, I don't talk about acquisitions on the podcast. I know when I first started podcasting, it seemed like that was something a lot of podcasters were doing, is that they would talk about the yarn that they had bought, which I love talking about yarn, and when I get new yarn, I'm excited about it. But I know that for me, watching podcasts, it could make me feel, I don't know, especially since a lot of the yarns they showed off were hand-dyed yarns, and I can only buy so many hand-dyed yarns. I know I'm working with a lot of hand-dyed yarns today, but a lot of them were bought on sale or from a D-stash. So, or like over time, like some of them I've had for a couple of years before using. Because I don't ever want to make anybody feel as if they are not a real knitter, whatever that means, if they can't use hand-dyed yarns for every project. I love hand-dyed yarns, and I love using them, and I love supporting indie dyers, but I cannot buy all the indie dyed yarns that I want. But I know when I watched podcasts, and then when I started podcasting, I felt like I felt that pressure, like, oh, I have to do this. I have to have yarn to talk about. I felt like I had to do this. But then I just kind of stopped because it just felt weird. Now, I haven't recorded in 2 months. I've bought some special yarns that I would like to just mention and maybe talk about my plans for them. That's basically my goal. Generally, if I show off yarns, it's either just like they're so overwhelmingly amazing that I need to share them with you, or I want to have a specific plan, or there's a story with it. Something besides just like, look, I bought this yarn. Go support this dyer. Next. It just doesn't feel like me. Anyway, that aside, I do have 2 skeins of yarn I want to talk about. Continuing with our Lord of the Rings theme, I bought this skein of self-striping yarn from Valkyrie Fibers, who I have followed on Instagram for a really long time, and she has lots of beautiful Lord of the Rings colorways, but I'd never been able to catch one for shop updates, and a lot of her colorways sell out really quickly. But I happened to see that she had some new yarn in her Etsy shop, so I went on and I bought this yarn. It's from her Middle Earth series. The colorway is Eowyn, and it's 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, 463 yards. So I'm planning to knit a pair of socks with these, just some vanilla socks, because it's self-striping yarn and it's beautiful. I want to cast these on soon because, like I mentioned, I'm re-listening to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I'm about halfway through the last book at this point, so I want to cast these on soon because I want to work on these while I'm still listening to the books, because why not? Like, if you follow me on Instagram, you may have seen that I posted the other day about me knitting on my Seaworthy wrap with my Anne of Green Gables mini skeins while wearing my Anne of Green Gables t-shirt. It just makes me happy. So I'm hoping to cast on a pair of vanilla socks with these soon. Problem is that I have a couple of socks on the needles right now that I want to finish before I start this pair of socks, but I also have not been motivated at all to work on. So we'll see. These may be cast on before I finish those ones. So that, and she has other yarns along other sort of literary or other nerdy themes that are also beautiful. But I love Eowyn as a character, so I was happy to get this yarn. The other yarn that I want to talk about, I purchased at Picnic Portland. I guess it was a little bit over a week ago now. This is an event. I think they've had a couple. I believe they do, in the summer they'll do one outside, and in the winter they do one inside. It's like a big, like, craft and art fair, and it has tons of local makers, both from Maine, and sometimes there's people from Massachusetts or New Hampshire. I haven't been able to make it to any of them yet. They've just been times when I had something else going on, so I hadn't made it, but I had this Saturday free, so I went, and oh my goodness, I walked around like at least 4 times, like completely by all the booths 4 times. Just because I walked by all the booths one time without buying anything, and then I went back around once I kind of got the layout, knew who was there, knew what was there. Then I could kind of pick what I wanted to buy. And it was cool. There were some people there that I had been following on Instagram for a while, or people that I had started following on Instagram because the Picnic Portland Instagram page had shared some of their posts on their page, and I had started following them. So one of the people that I just started following on Instagram was Indie Dyer. So the dyer is, I don't know exactly, is it Dittany Dyes? I'm not 100% sure. But I think it's a dyer duo. I think they're relatively new to dyeing, but they're local to me. It says that they dye yarn in Saco, Maine, which is literally 20 minutes away from me. So I knew that when I showed up, I knew I wanted to go and buy some yarn from them. Because I haven't been to tons and tons of craft fairs, but the ones I have been to, there will sometimes be hand-spun yarn, but I don't always see a lot of hand-dyed yarn. So I was excited to see some hand-dyed yarn at a craft fair. So I bought this beautiful red color. It's like, kind of matches my shirt today. It's one of my favorite colors, kind of like a red, pinky, maroon sort of color. This is their colorway Dress Robes. It's a superwash merino nylon base. I don't have any specific plans for this. I bought a solid color on purpose so that it might be easier to combine with something else. Either maybe as a colorwork yoke on something, or make a 2-color shawl, or a cute pair of pattern socks. But I don't know exactly what I'm going to make, but I just kind of wanted to talk about the beautiful yarn that I bought from a very local to me indie dyer that I got to meet in person at the craft fair. Somebody else that was at the craft fair that I have followed on Instagram for a long time is Leah of Ms. Cleaver, who designs knitting patterns. She's designed a lot for Quince & Company, and also designs embroidery patterns. So I already had 2 of her embroidery patterns. One I had purchased, one I won in a giveaway, and then I bought a 3rd one. So buying the 3rd one kind of prompted me to finish one of hers that I'd already started. So the one that I bought at Picnic was her It's Not a Weed If It's Wanted pattern. Growing up, we, as little kids, my siblings and I would always run out in the yard and pick all the dandelions and everything, and be all excited that we picked our mom flowers and go and give them to her. And she would always put them in a cup and keep them on the counter or by the sink. My mom always loved her dandelion bouquets. So growing up, to me, a dandelion was a flower. It was not a weed. I love this, that it's not a weed if it's wanted. And I'm excited to try doing some embroidery letters. I've done a few cross-stitch projects, and I've done one embroidery project, since I've been somebody who actually thinks about the embroidery, not just a little kid being like, oh hey, I can make this cool thing, which is fabulous, but not quite the same as actually making something that looks the way that I want it to look. So I'm excited to try this one. And her kits come with everything that you'll need. They include a little guide to some simple embroidery stitches. It includes the fabric with the pattern printed on it, an embroidery hoop, a needle, all the embroidery floss that you'll need, which is really nice as somebody who's very new to embroidery. It can be I don't know what kind of fabric is best. I can find embroidery floss, but I don't know what kind of fabric to use. So it's really nice that the kits come with everything that you need right inside of them in these cute little brown envelopes. So this is the new one that I bought. The pattern that I had already started was her egg gatherer pattern. I promise I took the hoop off, and it's been off for a couple days and just still has the indents. And I had kind of gotten stuck on this because I didn't know how to do the techniques and I didn't know the name of it, so I didn't know how to look it up. But I eventually just kind of figured it out, making it up as I go. So, yeah, so I had purchased this pattern from her a while ago. And something else that I love about Leah's embroidery patterns and kits is that anything that involves people comes in a variety of skin tones, and some of them, like she has a couple summery ones of people swimming, and those ones come in a variety of skin tones and body shapes. So you can customize it, make it look however you want. So this, and for this particular one, you also could pick the skirt color, the fabric for that. So what got me stuck the first time was this skirt, because the pattern is printed on the fabric, but then you stitch on the skirt, and then you add on the arm, the hand, and the basket of eggs. So I just wasn't sure how to get the fabric on for the skirt while still knowing where to stitch the rest of the pattern. What I ended up doing, I just sewed the skirt on, and basically if I held it up to the light, I could see the shapes of where I needed to stitch the rest of this on top. And then I just pulled up on her website the embroidery kit pattern, because the kit, like, it had a picture in it, but I pulled up her webpage so I could zoom in on the pictures that she had of this kit, to zoom in on some of the sections that I wanted to do to make sure that I was basically following the pattern, so I didn't have to keep turning it around. So I did a lot of this over just a couple of days. Basically all I had done was like the first part of the boot. So then I picked it up and I finished the boot, the leg, just about everything. I'm almost done. I just need to finish up the basket. All the eggs are done. I need to do the wiring on the basket, and then I saved the grass for last because I knew it would be easy. So then just doing some simple back stitch to stitch along the grass on the bottom. I don't know how well you can see it, but there's like a line of just some grass. So that's all I have left for this. And then I can start on either the It's Not a Weed If It's Wanted pattern. I'm trying to remember what the other pattern is I have by her. Oh, it's like lupins in a vase. That's what it is. So I don't know which one I will start next, but I'm definitely going to keep embroidering. It's a nice craft to do. I found myself being drawn more to embroidery and cross stitch over the summer, because sometimes it's nice to switch to a different project, but to give your mind to challenge your brain a little bit, to give your hands a break, not have wool sitting on my lap when it's really hot. So I was excited to get the new kit from Leah, and also to be motivated to pick up and finish the one that I already had. And it's actually motivated some of my sisters to do some stitching. I'm the second oldest of 9 kids. I still live at home because housing is expensive and college is expensive. So one of the sisters 2 years younger than I am, one Sunday afternoon, she was like, I feel like making something, and she used to sew a lot in high school. But she was like, maybe sewing, but like I don't want to get my sewing machine out, and I don't really have fabric. So I was like, hey, I have cross stitching supplies. So she's been doing some cross stitching, and then my little sisters, who are 13, 10, turning 11 this week, and 8, they all also wanted to jump in. So going patternless, they're just making it up as they go, which is really fun to watch. So yeah, my embroidery kind of sparked multiple siblings doing some cross stitching. So that is all I have for crafty endeavors in my life in general. There's been a lot of things changing this year, which is also part of why I haven't been podcasting as much. My work schedule is different than it used to be. I used to work at a daycare that was really close to my house, So like I would work like 6:30 to 3:30 every day, and I was also going to a local state university and taking classes there in the afternoons and evenings. And then in January, I left the daycare and started an internship at a local accounting firm in Portland. So I did that for tax season, and then I got an offer to stay on for the summer. So I did that. I was only taking one class while doing my internship, and then I'm taking a couple of summer classes. But I graduated from college in May. Feels like it's been forever, but I did it. I made it through. So I did my internship. I graduated from college in May. So I get an offer to stay on as an intern for the summer, and then once I get 150 credit hours for like college credit hours, then I can become a full-time staff accountant. Just kind of the rules of the company. I don't know if it's different in different states, but basically to sit for the certified public accountant exams, you're required to have 150 college credit hours. So that's why. It seems like a random number, but there's a reason. So that's why I'm taking summer classes even though I graduated, so that I can get to 150 credits. And once the class that I'm taking right now is done, I will be at that point. And I talked to one of the partners at the office last week, so I'll be getting an offer, like an official offer with pay and all that stuff, once I'm done. So that's very exciting. So, but that does mean that I'm working typical office hours. So I can no longer just record a podcast after I get home from work at 3:30, because I now get home from work closer, like I get out of work at 5, I get home closer to 6. So I can't necessarily promise that podcasts will be more regular, because they won't. I still definitely will keep on podcasting. It will probably just be a more occasional thing, especially since January through April is tax season, and that means working overtime and just being busier. So like this past tax season, I was still definitely making things. I just didn't have time to sit down, talk about it, and then edit and upload. So I'll still definitely be present on Instagram, and I try to update my Ravelry every month or so. I'll go on and update all my projects and input all the information. So I'll still definitely be doing that. I just won't necessarily be very active posting videos. So yeah, that's basically my quick little life update reason why I'm not going to be uploading weekly. Can't even imagine. I've never done that. It's bananas to me. And there's people who upload daily vlogs. I don't even understand. Good for you. I couldn't do it. So anyway, that's basically what I've been working on, what I've been doing lately. Thank you for stopping by, for sticking with me, even with my irregular uploading schedule. I hope that wherever you are making time to do some creative work, whether it's doodling or knitting, stitching, whatever it is that you like to do. Make some time for that today, and that you just have a wonderful day. And I'll see you later. Bye.